The art of war is of vital importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death, a road either to safety or to ruin. Hence, it is a subject of inquiry which can on no account be neglected.
Most of us fight battles the hard way. We push, we grind, we exhaust ourselves trying to force a victory. It's brutal, and it's exactly what Sun Tzu warns against. In his masterpiece, The Art of War, Sun Tzu points out a fatal flaw in human nature. We love the drama of the fight, but he argues that the greatest victory requires no fighting at all. How is that even possible? It sounds like a paradox. It's not. Sun Tzu lays out a psychological framework for total domination. He shows how to win before the first blow is ever struck. He isn't talking about ancient chariot warfare here. He's talking about human psychology in the boardroom, in negotiations, in your daily life. Sun Tzu argues that true power is invisible. He believes it is about knowing yourself so deeply and your opponent so thoroughly that the outcome is rigged in your favor. It's about leverage, timing, deception, and it requires a radical shift in how you view conflict. So let's break down his core philosophy. Let's see how he turns the underdog into the apex predator. Most people think winning happens on the battlefield. It doesn't. Sun Tzu argues that you win or lose way before a single sword is drawn. He calls this the temple calculations. It's the brutal, honest math you do before making a move. So many leaders skip this step. They run on emotion or pure ego. They just want to fight. Sun Tzu warns that this is absolute suicide. He states that the general who wins makes many calculations in his temple before the fight. The general who loses makes few. It's that simple. No magic, just math. He points out 5 crucial factors you have to measure. First, the moral law. Do your people actually believe in your leadership? Will they go to the mat for the cause? If there is any doubt, you're already dead in the water. Second, heaven. This is timing, trends, the climate. You don't attack into a blizzard. Third, earth. The actual terrain. Where are you fighting? Is it a tight valley or an open plain? In modern terms, do you know the exact landscape of your industry? Fourth is the commander. That's you. Are you wise, sincere, benevolent, courageous, and strict? Notice that strict is in there. Sun Tzu doesn't coddle. Weakness at the top rots the whole army. Finally, method and discipline. Logistics, supply lines. Who gets paid what? Sun Tzu argues it is the absolute backbone of victory. You have to weigh these 5 factors against your enemy. Brutally, honestly. Do not lie to yourself. Lying to yourself gets your troops killed. He poses a series of direct questions to benchmark against the rival. Who has the better trained officers? Who has the better trained men? Which side administers rewards and punishments more fairly? Sun Tzu states that by answering these questions, he can forecast victory or defeat with absolute certainty. Absolute certainty. That's a massive claim, but he backs it up, because at this stage, war is just data. It's purely analytical. If the math says you lose, you don't fight, period. You pivot. You wait, you change the variables. A lot of people charge into battles they can't win because they want to look tough. Sun Tzu calls them fools. He points out that victorious warriors win first and then go to war. Defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. Let that sink in. It's a total paradigm shift. Most of us just jump into the fray. We start the business. We pick the fight. We send the angry email. Then we try to figure out how to win while we're taking punches to the face. That's exactly why we lose. Sun Tzu argues for radical patience, radical preparation. You sit in the temple, You run the numbers. You map the terrain. You check your ego at the door. If you hold all the advantages, you strike, fast and hard. If you don't, you do nothing. It takes immense discipline to do nothing, but that's the ultimate secret. Winning every battle isn't about fighting every battle. It's about only fighting the ones where the math is already in your favor.
Sun Tzu does not mince words when it comes to the foundation of victory. He sets the ultimate baseline right at the very start of his philosophy. You want to win every battle? You absolutely have to start here. It is the most famous concept in the art of war for a good reason. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. It sounds highly poetic, but Sun Tzu is not writing poetry. He is writing a survival manual for high-stakes conflict. He points out a cold, hard truth that most leaders want to ignore. Ignorance is a literal death sentence. Most people think they know their competition. They don't. They rely on assumptions and outdated information. Sun Tzu argues that you need to know exactly what keeps your enemy awake at night. You need their darkest secrets. What are their supply lines? Who are their weak leaders? Where is their morale cracking?
He insists on extreme, aggressive information gathering. No guesswork. Guesswork gets your entire army killed. You have to penetrate their defenses mentally before a single sword is ever drawn, because a battle is won long before it actually starts. That is Sun Tzu's ultimate promise. You win in the preparation phase. But here is where it gets really uncomfortable for most people: knowing yourself.
Sun Tzu warns that self-deception is the single biggest tactical error you can make. You have to look at your own forces without any ego. Are your troops exhausted? Are your resources actually running dry? Is your own leadership competent? People lie to themselves all the time. Kings overestimate their strength. Businesses lie to their shareholders and to themselves. Sun Tzu points out that if you don't know your own breaking point, your enemy will absolutely find it for you. It is brutal, but it is the reality of conflict. So what happens if you only get half of this equation right? Sun Tzu lays out the ruthless math of warfare. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. It becomes a 50-50 shot, a random coin toss. You are basically flipping a coin with human lives and limited resources. Sun Tzu considers that totally unacceptable for a master strategist. You do not gamble. And if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, Sun Tzu is incredibly blunt about this worst-case scenario. He states you will succumb in every single battle, not just some battles, every single one. It guarantees total annihilation. This is not just ancient military history. This applies right now to your business, your negotiations, and your daily competitive life. Sun Tzu demands ruthless objectivity from you. You have to strip away your personal bias. You gather hard, unforgiving data. You map out the terrain of your own mind and your opponent's mind. Do this before you ever make a move, because hope is not a strategy. That is the absolute foundation of winning. Everything else is just noise. Think about how most people fight. They make a plan, they march forward, and they crash straight into a wall. It is stupid. Sun Tzu points this out immediately. He argues that the ultimate military formation is to have no formation at all, formlessness. He compares a victorious army to water. Water does not have a set shape. It flows, it adapts, and it goes where the path is easiest. Sun Tzu points out that military tactics are exactly like unto water. For water in its natural course runs away from high places and hastens downwards. So in war, the way is to avoid what is strong.
and to strike at what is weak. It makes total sense, right? But most generals do the exact opposite. They attack strength with strength. Sun Tzu calls this the height of folly. You are just wasting resources. You are losing men. And for what? Ego.
Sun Tzu warns us about getting attached to our own plans. The battlefield changes constantly. Terrain shifts, weather turns, the enemy reacts. So your strategy has to be a living thing. Sun Tzu argues that you must work out your victory in relation to the foe whom you are facing. He points out that just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions. He who can modify his tactics in relation to his opponent and win, Sun Tzu calls him a heaven-born captain.
It is the highest praise in his book, but it requires total detachment. You have to let go of your brilliant plan the second it stops working. That hurts. We love our plans. But Sun Tzu says your loyalty is to victory, not to your blueprint. So how do you actually be formless? Sun Tzu explains it perfectly. Conceal your dispositions. If you are formless, the deepest spies cannot pry into your secrets. The wise general cannot lay plans against you. Think about it. You cannot punch water. You cannot trap water. It just shifts. Sun Tzu argues that you should make your enemy prepare for an attack on his left flank, and then you hit him on the right. You make him think you are passive, then you strike like a thunderbolt. He points out that this formlessness drives the enemy insane. They have to defend everywhere, and Sun Tzu says when they defend everywhere, they are weak everywhere. It is a brilliant trap. You let the enemy exhaust himself trying to guess your shape. Then you flow right through the cracks. It is brutal, it is simple, and it wins every single time. Look at the modern world. Business, negotiations, even your daily conflicts. We hit a wall and just push harder. Sun Tzu warns that this is a fatal error. He argues that flexibility is the ultimate weapon. Look at water. A tiny stream can carve through solid rock, not by hitting it hard, but by flowing around it, over it, under it, by persisting through adaptation. Sun Tzu points out that the nature of water is to avoid highs and fill lows, so find the low ground, find the path of least resistance. Strike where the enemy is unprepared, appear where you are not expected. This isn't cowardice. Sun Tzu argues it is supreme efficiency. It is the art of winning without destroying yourself in the process. Be like water. Let your opponent be the rigid rock, because rocks break, but water keeps flowing. So, how do you actually win? Most people think it's about aggression, clashing swords, high body counts. But Sun Tzu argues the exact opposite. He points out that the ultimate victory isn't fighting at all. It's winning without throwing a single punch. That's the real art of war. And he lays out a very specific hierarchy of strategy to achieve this. At the absolute top of this ladder, attacking the enemy's strategy. Sun Tzu says the greatest generals dismantle the opponent's plans before they even take shape. You don't wait for them to line up their troops. You figure out what they want to do. Then you make it impossible for them to do it. It's about being 2 steps ahead. You cut off their options, and suddenly they have nowhere to go. If you miss that window, Sun Tzu points to the second best option: attack their alliances. Isolate them. He warns that an enemy with friends is dangerous, so you break those connections. You sow doubt. You turn their allies into neutrals, or better yet, enemies. You leave them standing completely alone on the battlefield. Without support, they collapse under their own weight. Now, what if you can't disrupt their plans or their friends? Sun Tzu says this is where things get messy. The third level is attacking their army. This is actual combat. and he treats this as a failure of leadership. Why? Because now you're trading lives, resources, time. It's a grind. He views open battle as a last resort. You only fight when there is literally no other choice. Because fighting is unpredictable, chaos takes over. Even if you win, you bleed. Sun Tzu makes it clear that the costs often outweigh the benefits. So smart leaders avoid this stage if they can. They don't let their ego push them into a slaughter. They stay patient. And then there's the bottom of the barrel, the absolute worst thing you can do. Sun Tzu says it's besieging walled cities, attacking a fortified position. This is pure frustration. He warns that this strategy takes months of preparation. Troops get sick, morale plummets, generals lose their temper and send men to die like ants against a wall. It's a disaster. Sun Tzu argues that a siege is the ultimate strategic failure. You are wasting everything for a piece of dirt. The best leaders know when to walk away from a bad fight. They don't throw good money after bad, or good lives after bad strategy. Winning isn't about destroying the enemy at all costs. It's about getting what you want with the least friction possible. So look at the hierarchy again. Attack the strategy, attack the alliances, attack the army, siege the city. Sun Tzu is telling us to aim high. Start at the top. The closer you are to attacking their strategy, the cheaper the victory. The closer you get to a siege, the more it costs. It's that simple. Sun Tzu says winning every battle starts long before swords are drawn. It starts in the mind, and it starts with the most dangerous weapon of all, information. He calls it knowing the enemy and knowing yourself. That's the mirror strategy. You look at your opponent, but you also have to look at your own reflection. Brutally, honestly, no ego. But he warns us, if you only know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. That's a coin toss, 50-50. You win some, you lose some. That's not strategy. That's gambling. And Sun Tzu hates gambling. He deals in certainties. He wants the deck stacked in your favor before the game even starts. Then comes the fatal flaw. He argues that if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. You're blind, flailing in the dark. You are essentially marching your forces off a cliff. It's a tragedy waiting to happen. So how do you get this information? Spies. Espionage. Sun Tzu loves spies. He dedicates an entire chapter to them. He argues that foreknowledge cannot be elicited from ghosts and spirits. It cannot be obtained inductively from experience, nor by any deductive calculation. It must be obtained from men who know the enemy's situation. Real people, real intel. You need to know their strengths, their weaknesses, their supply lines, even the emotional state of their general. Is he arrogant? Good. Provoke him. Let him make a rash decision. Is he cautious? Confuse him. Feint and watch how he reacts. Sun Tzu stresses that deception is the backbone of warfare. He famously notes that all warfare is based on deception. If you are strong, appear weak. Lure them in. If you are weak, appear strong. Make them hesitate. But you can't fake it effectively if you don't know what you actually are. That's where the mirror comes in again. Look at your own forces. Are they tired? Are they hangry? Are they losing morale? You have to be honest. Sun Tzu points out that leaders lie to themselves all the time. They drink their own Kool-Aid. They think they are invincible. And that arrogance, that's what kills armies. It destroys empires. You have to strip away your own vanity. So the mirror strategy is twofold. Penetrate the enemy's mind and audit your own, constantly, relentlessly. You need to know the terrain Is it swampy? Are there choke points? Sun Tzu warns against fighting on ground where you don't know the lay of the land. Before you make a move, you need to know the board. You need to know the pieces. Every single one. Information is your supreme advantage. Without it, you are just reacting. And Sun Tzu warns that if you are reacting, you are already losing. You need to be proactive, dictating the terms. You decide where to fight, when to fight, or whether to fight at all. And you only get that kind of control by holding the mirror up to the battlefield, seeing reality for exactly what it is. Cold, hard, true. That's how you win, before it even begins. You know that famous line, right? Sun Tzu states point blank that all warfare is based on deception. It's the absolute cornerstone of his whole philosophy. He argues you don't win by just having the biggest army or the sharpest swords. No, you win by hacking your opponent's brain. It's raw, it's brutal, and it works. He points out that perception is reality on the battlefield. So if you look strong, you have to act weak. When you're ready to attack, you have to look completely disorganized. It messes with the enemy's head. Sun Tzu calls for total misdirection. You bait the enemy. You feed them lies. You make them arrogant. He warns that an angry general is a blind general. If your opponent is quick to anger, irritate him. Poke at him until he snaps. Sun Tzu explains that when people get emotional, they get stupid. They stop looking at the facts. They charge into traps. That's exactly what you want. It's psychological warfare, centuries before anyone even coined the term. He notes that you should pretend to be inferior just to feed the enemy's ego. Why? Because an arrogant enemy drops their guard. They get sloppy. They stop preparing for the worst-case scenario. And that's the exact moment you strike. It's like playing poker with all the cards visible to you, but hidden from the other guy. Sun Tzu points out that you never, ever let the enemy know your true intentions. It's about shape-shifting. 1 minute you're invisible, the next you're a thunderstorm. He argues that when you divide the enemy's attention, you divide their strength. You want them trying to defend everywhere at once, because if they defend everywhere, they defend nowhere. It's simple math, really, but it's incredibly effective. Sun Tzu explains that you have to control the narrative of the fight. You make the enemy react to you. You never react to them. That keeps you in the driver's seat. Sun Tzu's insights aren't just for ancient battlefields. He argues that in any conflict, deception is your best leverage. You don't show your hand. You let the competition think they have the upper hand. He points out that the ultimate goal is to win without fighting. How do you do that? You break their will to fight before swords are even drawn. You create so much doubt and confusion that the enemy defeats themselves. Sun Tzu says you disrupt their alliances. You spread rumors. You cut off their mental supply lines. He emphasizes that deception isn't cowardly, it's pure efficiency. He warns against the romantic idea of a fair fight. Forget that. Sun Tzu argues there is no glory in a fair fight. You want an unfair fight. You want all the odds stacked in your favor before you make a single move. That's the genius of it. He shows us that the mind is the ultimate battleground. Win the mental war, and the physical victory is just a formality. It's cold, it's calculating, and if you actually listen to what he's saying, it completely changes how you look at winning. Before a single arrow leaves the bow, the war is already over. Sun Tzu makes this absolutely clear. He argues that battles are won and lost in the quiet rooms of preparation, not on the bloody, chaotic fields. Most people think strategy is what happens when the fight starts, but Sun Tzu calls that amateur. dangerous thinking. He points out that the real war is the invisible one. It's the intense planning. It's the cold, hard calculation. He insists that the actual fight is just the final, messy execution of what you've already figured out in your head. He says victorious warriors win first and then go to war. Defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. It's brutal. It's also completely true. Sun Tzu warns that jumping into a conflict without total knowledge of the board is suicide. Otherwise, you're just gambling with real lives. Sun Tzu breaks this down into strict, unemotional calculations. He actually demands that leaders spend immense time on the math of warfare before making a single move. It's not about courage or blind bravery. It's about supply lines, weather patterns, and the shifting terrain. He states that if you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. That's a coin toss. Real strategists don't do coin tosses. Sun Tzu argues that you need an overwhelming advantage before the first blow is even struck. If you don't have it, you wait. Patience is a weapon. Sun Tzu highlights this reality over and over again throughout his work. He advises against ever fighting out of sudden anger or bruised ego. Anger fades. Ruined kingdoms do not recover. He points out that the greatest victory is that which requires no battle at all. How do you actually pull that off? By being so overprepared, so structurally dominant, that the enemy looks at you and gives up. That's the ultimate power move. You win the mental game before anyone gets hurt. Let's look at the hidden factors Sun Tzu obsesses over. The moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, method, and discipline. He calls these the 5 constants. You can't ignore a single one. Sun Tzu argues that the side with the deeper alignment of these factors will win, always. It's not magic. It's a formula. So when you see a master operating, it looks effortless and spontaneous. But Sun Tzu tells us that behind that effortless victory are months, maybe years, of agonizing preparation. He points out that generals must carefully weigh the scales. They must count the real cost. War drains the treasury. It tires the troops out. Sun Tzu warns that lengthy wars ruin states, no matter how rich they are. You need to be fast and precise. Sun Tzu doesn't believe in leaving things to chance. He argues that luck is for the unprepared. True power comes from stacking the odds so heavily in your favor that failure isn't an option. He points out that a wise commander prepares his defense first. Only then does he look for the enemy's vulnerability. It's a game of patience and quiet strength. You secure your own position, you wait for the enemy to make a fatal mistake, and Sun Tzu promises us one thing: they always do. Look at how most people handle conflict. Head down, charging straight into a solid brick wall. It is completely exhausting just to watch them do it. But Sun Tzu, he says that is exactly what loses the battle before it even begins. He argues that the ultimate skill in warfare isn't smashing your strength against their strength. It is about finding the void, the absolute weak point. Sun Tzu calls this striking at the vulnerable point, the chu. You hit them right where they are not. Think about how water moves. Sun Tzu uses this brilliant metaphor all the time in his writings. Water does not crash into a massive boulder and try to shove it out of the way. It effortlessly flows right around it. It naturally seeks the lowest ground, taking the absolute path of least resistance. He points out that your military tactics, your strategy in life, should be exactly the same. Avoid what is strong and heavily defended. Strike relentlessly at what is weak. It sounds ridiculously simple when you say it out loud, but in the heat of conflict, human ego always takes over.
People desperately want the glory of the dramatic, head-on collision. Sun Tzu warns against this dangerous ego trip. He notes that true victory is clean, almost invisible to the untrained eye. It is effortless. You do not win the fight by being the biggest, loudest guy in the room. You win by poking the giant right in the unprotected eye. So how do you actually find that hidden vulnerable point? You have to force the enemy to reveal it to you. Sun Tzu advises agitating the opponent until they make a fatal mistake.
You probe their defenses constantly. You fake a massive attack on the left side, and you watch very closely to see how they react. Do they panic and overcommit their best troops? Do they accidentally leave their right flank wide open and undefended? That right there is your golden opening. He explains that an opposing force is just like a human body. When they protect the head, the stomach is totally exposed. When they protect the stomach, the head gets hit hard. Sun Tzu argues that no opponent, no matter how rich or powerful, is truly invincible. They always have a gap in their armor. You just need the cold patience to wait and find it. And then you need the absolute ruthlessness to exploit it without hesitation. It is all about pure efficiency. Why on earth would you waste your resources, energy, and lives fighting a fair fight? Sun Tzu absolutely hates fair fights. He says a fair fight is just a glaring sign of bad, lazy strategy. You want a totally unfair advantage. You want to strike the chew, the absolute weakest link in their entire chain. Maybe that vulnerability is their overstretched supply lines. Maybe it is the opposing commander's blinding arrogance. Or maybe it is just terrible morale among their exhausted troops. Sun Tzu teaches that this weakness isn't always physical. It is often deeply psychological too. Hit them where it hurts the most, and the entire structure collapses in seconds. That is the real art of war, not destroying the enemy through messy, chaotic brute force, but making them collapse under their own massive weight, sources and energy completely intact. The enemy is left defeated, confused, and thoroughly broken. That is exactly how you win every single time. Not with blind muscle, but with calculated surgical precision. Time. It is the one asset you cannot buy back. Sun Tzu makes this painfully clear in The Art of War. He argues that opportunity doesn't knock twice. It barely knocks once. A fleeting window opens, and if you blink, it is gone. Sun Tzu points out that hesitation is the ultimate killer of empires. It is not poor planning. It is not lack of resources. It is waiting for the perfect moment. That perfect moment, it is a myth. He warns that prolonged warfare, or prolonged waiting, drains your resources and kills morale. Speed is everything. Sun Tzu notes that water can sweep away heavy stones. Why? Momentum and speed. A falcon breaks the body of its prey because of timing. It strikes exactly when it needs to, not early, not late. He argues that the greatest strategic advantage is simply moving faster than the other guy. You see an opening? You strike, no second guessing. Sun Tzu insists that your plans must be dark and impenetrable as night. But when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. That is the standard. A thunderbolt does not ask for permission, it just hits. He points out that opportunities multiply as they are seized. Think about that for a second. You do not get more options by waiting. You get more options by taking action. One move unlocks the next. Sitting on the sidelines just leaves you paralyzed. Sun Tzu stresses that timing is the essence of war. You can have the best strategy in the world, the biggest army, the smartest generals. But if you are late, you lose. It is that simple. It is brutal. The enemy adapts. The market shifts. The advantage evaporates. He warns against the arrogance of preparation. You can over-prepare yourself into defeat. You are fixing armor while the enemy is taking your territory. If you hold it too long, your arms shake. You miss the shot.
So what do? You constantly scan for that single weak point. Sun Tzu says the enemy will always reveal a flaw. Always. An unguarded flank, a moment of distraction. That is your cue. You drop everything else. You commit fully. Half measures do not work here. Sun Tzu makes it clear that you have to be ruthless with your decisiveness. Fear of making a mistake is what creates the ultimate mistake, doing nothing. He argues that even a slightly flawed plan executed violently today is better than a perfect plan executed next week. Next week is too late. The world has moved on. The opponent has reinforced. You have lost the element of surprise, and surprise is your best weapon. Sun Tzu warns that victory goes to the one who takes the initiative. You dictate the pace. Do not let the enemy choose the time and place of battle. You force their hand. How? By seizing the opportunity the absolute second it appears. Leadership isn't about the title. Sun Tzu makes that absolutely clear right from the jump. It's about the mind. He argues that a general's character is the single most critical factor in winning a battle. Forget the armor, forget the shiny weapons. If the mind of the general is weak, the army collapses, period. It's brutal, but it's true. Sun Tzu points out 5 dangerous traits that can absolutely ruin a leader. He calls them out specifically. First, recklessness. A general who just wants to fight, who charges in blindly, he gets his people killed. Second, cowardice. A leader paralyzed by the fear of capture, he'll hesitate. And hesitation in war is death. Then there's a quick temper. Sun Tzu warns that a general who gets easily provoked by insults is a puppet. The enemy pulls his strings. So simple, right? But he doesn't stop there. He notes that a leader who is too obsessed with honor, who is easily shamed, is a massive liability. They'll walk right into a trap just to save face. And the final flaw? Too much compassion. Yeah, you heard that right. Too much compassion. Sun Tzu argues that a leader who loves his men too much will be hesitant to put them in danger. He won't make the hard calls. And because of that, everyone dies. It's a harsh reality. So, what does a winning general look like? Sun Tzu defines them by 5 core virtues: wisdom, credibility, benevolence, courage, and strictness. He argues that you need all 5. You can't just pick and choose. Wisdom is about seeing the battlefield for what it really is, not what you want it to be. Credibility means your words actually carry weight. If you make a promise, you keep it. Benevolence ensures the troops know you care about their ultimate survival. Courage is obvious, but it's about the courage to act, not just to fight. And strictness? Strictness keeps the machine running. Without discipline, an army is just a mob with swords. Sun Tzu is adamant about this balance. A leader has to be feared, sure, but they also have to be loved. He points out that if you punish troops before they are attached to you, they will rebel. But if they are attached to you and you don't enforce discipline, they become useless. It's a razor-thin line. You treat them like your own children, Sun Tzu says. You care for them, you lead them into the deepest valleys. But when the time comes, you are absolutely ruthless in your execution of the plan. You demand total obedience. You see, the mind of the general is the ultimate weapon. Sun Tzu makes us realize that before a single arrow is fired, the battle is already won or lost, right here, in the leader's head. If the general is calm, adaptable, and free of ego, the army becomes an extension of that mind. It becomes unstoppable. You want to know how to win every battle? Sun Tzu has a shocking answer for you. He says the ultimate way to win is to not fight at all. Yeah, it sounds crazy, but it is the absolute core of his entire philosophy. Sun Tzu argues that supreme excellence is not about winning 100 victories in 100 battles. No, he states clearly that supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without a fight. Think about what war actually is.
It's chaos, it's destruction, it drains your resources dry. He warns that no country has ever benefited from a prolonged war. It just does not happen. You bleed cash, you lose your best people, you destroy the very prize you are trying to capture. So, Sun Tzu points out that smart commanders look at combat as a total failure of strategy. If you are drawing swords, you have already messed up. He breaks it down into a hierarchy of strategy. The absolute best move? Attack the enemy's strategy. Stop them before they even start. If they are planning to march, you disrupt their plans. You create doubt. You make them second-guess themselves. If that does not work, Sun Tzu says the next best thing is to attack their alliances. Isolate them. Strip away their friends. Make them stand alone. An isolated enemy is a weak enemy. Only after you have exhausted those options do you attack their army. And attacking their cities, that is the absolute last resort. He considers sieges to be the worst possible move. They take months. They waste lives. They ruin the land. It is a disaster. So why do we do it? Ego. Sun Tzu warns that rulers often go to war out of anger or pride. But anger fades. A ruined nation does not recover. He advises that a general must put their ego aside. You have to look at the cold, hard math of conflict. What does it cost to deploy an army? The wagons, the food, the armor? Sun Tzu calculates this stuff down to the ounce. He knew that the economic drain of warfare is massive, and the longer you fight, the weaker you get. Even if you win, a long war leaves you vulnerable to the next enemy waiting in the shadows. So you avoid it. You use diplomacy. You use deception. You use spies. You manipulate the board so thoroughly that the enemy just gives up. They realize they cannot win, so they surrender. That is the ultimate victory. Keeping your army intact, keeping their resources intact for you to take. It is brilliant. It is ruthless. It is the real art of war. Sun Tzu's masterpiece isn't really about war at all. It is about the absolute mastery of human psychology. When you strip away the chariots and the ancient battlefields, you are left with a brutal, timeless truth. The ultimate victory requires no bloodshed. We spend our lives fighting, pushing against brick walls in business, negotiations, and personal conflicts because our egos desperately demand the drama of the clash. But the art of war demands a radical pivot. It forces us to realize that true power is entirely invisible. It is the quiet, unemotional math you do in the temple long before making a move. To win every battle, you must become like water. You must shed your rigidity, abandon your attachment to the plan, and flow toward the path of least resistance. You do not crash into the opponent's strength. You strike relentlessly at their absolute weakest point. This is not cowardice, it is supreme efficiency. By knowing your enemy's deepest fears and honestly mapping your own breaking points, you wreck the game before the first piece ever moves on the board. You use deception to exploit the enemy's arrogance, and when the perfect moment arrives, you strike with the speed of a thunderbolt. Ultimately, Sun Tzu leaves us with a stark choice. We can continue to be the fools who charge into the fray first, desperately trying to figure out how to win while taking punches to the face. Or we can be the master strategists who secure the victory first, in the quiet of our own minds, and only then step onto the battlefield. The greatest leaders don't just win wars, they make fighting obsolete.